Okay, thanks, Peter, for the countdown in the chat. So I very welcome all listeners or later visitors of the recorded live stream for the second webinar from the University of Freiburg within the online conference of the bwLehrpool group in Europe. Today's topic is e-assessments at the University of Freiburg using open source systems bwLehrpool and ILIAS. It's the second lecture that we give from the University of Freiburg. As you see in the list, there are 3 names given on the slide. It's me, Nicole Wörle, it's Dirk von Sopodolitz, who's sitting next to me, and unfortunately Sven Zlotosz, who is conducting the e-assessment with our ILIAS system. He is, unfortunately, he is ill, so Dirk and me will do the presentation for you, and unfortunately Sven cannot join today. As I read the title again, bwLehrpool and ILIAS, I thought about a third system is missing, which is also open source. It's the Safe Exam browser. It's a third-party open source system that we are using in our ICT system for e-assessments. We will explain something about the Safe Exam browser later, but it's actually a third component that's... Okay. I'm back in a minute. Okay, somebody just went into the room, so we have to talk to them that we need in half an hour to stay inside this room. Okay, for our infrastructure, the participants who saw the first webinar already know about some parts of the technical infrastructure, which is called bwLehrpool. And today we want to have a deeper view on the e-assessments itself. So as an introduction, I just want to come back to providing infrastructure for e-assessments is still a challenge for IT services, especially for large universities. If you have groups for several hundred students and they all have to do an e-examination at the same time, it's not as easy to provide IT services than it is to provide some paper and pencil for several hundred students. So this challenge is also true for the University of Freiburg, and as e-assessment and e-examinations, also about IT skills. It's not just for some faculties that do multiple choice examinations, but also for IT skills. The demand and the demand for solutions to have IT skills-based examinations are increasing. So what we need, and probably all of the other universities need, is infrastructure for tests and assessment, and hopefully on a low-cost base. You saw from the title, we try to work with open source components or systems just to have a low-cost base. And what we do have in university, and which is true for most of the other universities, is that we have traditionally some PC pools or computer labs. So why not use them to conduct secured e-assessments? The problem you have to solve is you use the computer pools for some courses, PowerPoint courses, programming courses, whatever. So it's a teaching infrastructure. And now you need to have some systems to switch the teaching computer lab into a secured e-assessment lab. And this is what we provide with this bwLehrpool system. Dirk will tell you something again about the system for the changing of the operating systems. And I will have a look with you on the different kinds of e-assessments we have at the University of Freiburg. One type of e-assessment is the testing for knowledge, like multiple choice questions, drag and drop questions, whatever you can test on automatically basis. We use the computer labs, and we start on the computer labs a small minimal Linux with a browser and this Safe Exam browser, as I just was stating, that is missing in our component list. with this system, you just get a small operating system which just connects to our learning management system, and the e-examination is taken within the learning management system. ILIAS is like Moodle. It's an open source learning management system. It was developed in Germany, so it's quite common for Germany, but not for the rest of the world. But it's the same if you take Moodle. So, and I have a few screenshots from our ILIAS so that you can see what kind of questions are possible with our system. The other type, as I mentioned, is having e-assessment or e-examination possibilities for testing programming skills. So the students do not work in the learning management system, but they do have to solve some exercises and provide, or the output is some data they have to hand in, and so the lecturer can control, is the programming skills, did they do a good job or not? So you have to provide a virtual machine with the additional software the students should be tested in. And then you have the challenge, how can the students hand in their solution on a secured way, on a legal, controllable way, and so on. So this is the challenge for having e-assessments on programming skills, because you do not have the open teaching system, but you have to provide some security issues for the testing surroundings. And we will tell you something about that in a minute. So e-assessments, what you also can do is some optical blockers so that the students cannot have a look on the persons who are sitting before them or next to them. So we tested some different types of viewing blocking mechanisms. In most of the nowadays the e-assessments, we skip all those blocking systems, because in the LMS you can have randomized question types. So it's not very common that the people sitting next to you has the same question on the desktop as you have. And if he has, probably his ABC is randomized in another order than your questions or your answers. So probably if he clicks B, it must not be the same B as your question on the side. So in most of our e-examinations, we skip all those view blocking mechanisms. Our learning management system, as I said, it's comparably with Moodle. So we have the possibility to set up tests. You see in the top is you have still 79 minutes, so you can set up a time within the students have to work on the examination. You have the possibility to have multiple choice questions. It provides some drag and drop questions. So here you have the pictures in the middle and some words on the right side. So you drag the words onto the right picture to answer the question, simple multiple choice drag and drop questions, and get some short answers. Yeah, it's providing, like Moodle, all of the automatically corrected question types you can have. It's also for full text, which a tutor has to correct, and questions with video, questions with audio, all the things you can do with a computer, and either automatically correction or the tutor has to correct what the student provided or handed in. So coming back to our situation, we have the need for having e-examinations. We have our computer pools, which are used for teaching and e-assessment. So what we now need is our system to switch between the different requirements from the teachers, either it's a Java programming course or if it's an e-examination on testing. And that's why I hand over to Dirk, who will just repeat for those who were here last week, but just repeat a little bit on the system, how the system is working, switching or giving the surroundings for teachers to set up their systems for their needs, and switching into the operating mode which is needed.
Nicole, thank you very much for giving an introduction and motivation why we are doing all of this. I will give a little bit of recap what kind of requirements we got regarding our system. Fortunately, and that was a good situation which kind of boosted that project, is simply that both the e-learning and the e-science department part of the computer center, so that there were quite short ways to organize all this and optimize the pre-existing system to allow for new types of teaching and learning within the university. The main component, which is the kind of a base for all of this, is that we provide a middle layer that is the so-called bwLehrpool system, which allows to boot a standard PC somewhere in a computer lab, PC pools around on the campus into a net-booted Linux operating system. And on top of that Linux operating system, it is possible then to run either a certain restricted or specifically configured Linux environment, as mentioned already, in a kiosk mode with auto log on, or with traditional log on, where a user then has to authenticate and then gets a list to start some hypervisor and some pre-configured environment in it. That is the main idea of all of this. So it was easily possible to extend the system for some additional functionality.
There was the question if we use Ubuntu for the main component, I think you meant, not for the virtual machines that can be started, but for the PXE server.
That is easy to answer. So Ubuntu is one of the systems which actually can be used. So at the moment, it's actually in Ubuntu system. It's an 18.4 release of Ubuntu, but it's possible to use other Linux operating systems. So we have an SUSE operating environment or CentOS-based environment, but Ubuntu is for most of the users the most convenient way. That's why it's typically deployed. But it's the framework is a more general one, so pretty much every standard Linux OS could be made into such a net-booted environment, which then can host the various hypervisors to provide the other environments we are talking about. Just to give a little bit of an idea on the separation of tasks within the university. So the typical problem you face that you have the lecturers, you have the administrators, both of the systems on computer pools, and someone managing the hardware, which is typically done in a university like Freiburg within the various faculties, so that the computer center itself is not necessarily responsible for all of the infrastructure, but we are providing the bwLehrpool as an additional option to boot into that system, as shown the picture before. Then you can either choose the locally installed system or boot into the bwLehrpool environment. And then this environment, we will see it a little bit later on, via the various configuration options. Then you can decide either for normal operation modes, we pretty much talked about last time in our last webinar, where the user logs on a virtual machine, can be kicked on by his or her selection, and she ends up in some pre-configured environment produced by the lecturer who is teaching a certain course. The other option is using the pretty much the same base platform, but get the machine into the e-exam environment, which means then it's possible to limit certain functionality, like disallowing the use of USB sticks or restricting access to the network. That is a little bit more on the lecturers' side. So for the lecturers, they are solely responsible for kind of the content or what they would like to do within their course. Based on pre-configured images we provide, they can then extend them for their needs and what they would like to teach within their course, or on how they would like to configure the environment they would like to run their VM-based e-assessment in. That is a Java-based application they usually install on their own laptop or a desktop machine. That could be either Linux, Windows, or Mac, and then interact with our framework to get a list of available or pre-configured machines, can then create a course, and for that course create a virtual machine image, which they will upload again after they modified and gave the various configurations they would like to see then available in the pool. Big advantage to that is that all those mechanisms, all those activities are handled asynchronously. That means that the lecturer doesn't need to be on site in the pool to do all those preparations. And depending on the selections he or she is giving, the course is available pretty much in every pool which is operated on the campus of the University of Freiburg. So, which means that if a certain computer pool, computer lab is not available because some other course is held in it, it would be possible that the course could be given at some other place, or that the students have the possibility, if they find some other open and free pool, to choose exactly the environment they are using during their courses. We talked a little bit about the examination options. One option Nicole introduced was the interaction with the learning management system, and a good way to restrict the access directly just to such a system is the use of a safe exam browser. There are several options we were testing and implementing. One option was just to use a very small and limited Linux-based system, booting over the network, and then just starting into the browser. Another option, of course, is to let lecturers create some environment as a virtual machine, and then fire the browser up within that machine if, for instance, other software components are used during the exam.
There is another question for the last slide you showed. You were talking about having a Java surrounding for the lecturers who are configuring their virtual machines, and the question was, Java security is not the best thought, though.
Yes.
Is there a security issue?
We actually the tool is not actually in any sense active during some exams. It is pretty much just a helper tool to simplify things. Like otherwise, we simply could have produced some web interface where the lecturer would choose from a long list of existing images, click onto them, download them, which is just the container file for a virtual machine, like for instance VMware Player, VirtualBox, or QEMU, KVM. If you are sitting directly in a Linux environment, then the Java tool is helping to properly configure the hypervisor on the local machine of the lecturer, setting up everything so that the lecturer does not need to bother with manual configurations herself. Then the lecturer is interacting with that locally running guest operating system in the virtual machine, doing everything she would like to prepare for the course, like adding some programs or examples or documentation or whatever you might imagine you would like to see in your course. Then the machine is shut down, and the image needs to be passed back to the central infrastructure, and that again is handled by that Java tool. The Java tool is doing a little bit additional work. We will see it later on, for instance, like defining where the course actually should appear and define a course a virtual machine is assigned to. So that is part of that tool, and that tool later on is not active on the client when either a course or an assessment is running on.
Yeah, so it's more or less a helper tool. More or less a helper tool on the local machine from the lecturer, just to do this up and downloading process to our servers and working locally in a configured environment to set up his virtual machine in a quite easy way. So it's not really working online over the web. So.
And talking about the features, we see another feature of that tool on that screenshot. So if you have your lecture and would like to configure some environment specifically for your assessment, then you can use a pretty easy to use interface to either activate or deactivate the visibility of your course. For instance, if you provide a VM image just for an assessment, it doesn't make sense that exactly that assessment is available all over the campus, all over the time. So you can limit the availability or visibility of that particular image just for the time frame when you intend to run your assessment. The same applies to the actual computer labs where the image should be visible, meaning that after the user logged in, it is selectable from a list of choices for the student. And of course, as I introduced in before, it would make sense to either block or allow access to certain web or net or online resources. That is possible via that interface too. Same for access to USB devices or certain network shares, which could be used, for instance, to hand in some scripts written during a programming course, or some larger files or tables, whatever might get produced. And it would be possible to give the file name of a script which is auto-started when the machine is fired up within the hypervisor to do some additional preparation tasks which otherwise would not be possible.
Like you see on the screenshot, it's the start script which connects to our ILIAS e-assessment server. So it just opens the browser and connects to the server, whichever server you provide. So we had one e-assessment that did not take place on our ILIAS server, but from the University of Bremen. So our students just started the systems, and the browser started with the connecting the server from the distance university. So that's also possible.
And as I already talked about, here are some more screenshots on the configuration options you get, like for instance the limitation when certain images should appear or disappear within our network. And that is simply the list of options which at the actual moment could be set for those different lectures or assessments we would like to configure. The couple of screenshots we've seen before, that is pretty much the task of the lecturer to set such options. On the other side, so that the bwLehrpool framework is booted into the right environment, might require some additional privileges. And this is then handled through the configuration backend. So the bwLehrpool system got a pretty much advanced by now web configurable interface where PC pool computer lab administrators can set certain options like auto start of machines, shutdown of machines. Same applies for certain advanced features of exam periods, so that exams get defined in there, so that machines can automatically start it into the proper mode when an exam is actually due. Which then allows to operate with rather short switch over periods. So it's not necessarily required that a room gets reserved, for instance, for a whole week just to run 3 or 5 exams just over the week. But it could be switched between open mode, lecture mode, or e-assessment mode during through such an interface just by rebooting the machine and getting into the proper environment. Then to provide the administrators and later through some role management, which is more and more getting more and more added to the interface, that should help you to get an overview what kind of courses or assessments are on, because usually assessments should be handled with a certain more care than maybe other lectures, just to have an idea what is happening within your environment.
We have another question concerning, we talked a lot about we have the infrastructure, we have this Java tool for the lecturers, and the question is, what is the training burden to get academics conversant with the system?
That is pretty good question. What we've seen in before, that is long times ago, when we've been pretty much in the same position, that the computer center was operating just a small number of pools, and we got all the different lecturers, which were not really common with the pools, but was just with the operating system they expected. And usually we got quite a bit of a mismatch from the expectations of the lecturers and the expectations of the administrators from the computer center. And by separating those tasks, that we hand over much more authority to the lecturers by just providing them with the VM images they could modify to their tastes and requirements. We solved quite a bit of challenges, and we pretty much reduced the disappointments on both sides. So lecturers not finding the administrator available at a certain time, lecturers not finding the computer pool available on a certain time to test and try it out. And what we need to do, or what we kind of delegated to the department within the university, which is managing quite a number of lecturers for ICT courses, is that they give a rather short introduction on how to use the tool, give them a short introduction on what they actually can modify, and on what needs to be done to activate a course, because everything else is like managing your own desktop machine or your own laptop. So we have no complexities involved, like complex Active Directory services infrastructure, some complex Linux, Unix environments running. It's all pretty simple, boiled down and pre-configured, so that the average, even the average lecturer is quite happy to work in that environment, because they have a steep learning curve. And usually we don't see them again after they have been to our courses, because they can manage it everything on their own and at a time when they like. And we have really, really good experiences with those courses. What is actually happening, that we even see that lecturers start to even include more ICT components into their courses, because it's so easy to have their students run their own tasks within pre-configured environments, and to know that those environments are actually available somewhere on the campus, so that every student actually has a chance to use a university-provided environment, if not installed on his or her own machine.
Yeah, and we do help, our administrators help the lecturers who actually do e-examinations. So this is the full automatism is true for all the lecturers who have teaching courses. They are totally on their own working with the system. Those who conduct e-examinations, they still need some help from us, because we're still learning where are the legal issues, we're helping them in setting up in ILIAS, in our learning management systems, that the questions are coming in the right order, that the mechanisms under the rules under which the students do have to do the examinations are quite correct set up, because that's not an issue that every lecturer does regularly. So we help them on this part. I saw the question about the administration expense compared to paper e-examinations. I will come back to these questions in a few minutes, which is not easy to answer, I can tell. So, yeah.
Yeah, just to sum up, what we would like to achieve was that we didn't want to have expensive and time-consuming preparation tasks for the computer labs, because we simply don't have the personnel for that, which is true for the faculties as well. But as a modern university, of course, we would like to offer the possibility to run all kinds of exams going beyond the traditional paper and pencil options we had in before. The idea is that we avoid to manually or even automatically need to deal with single machines within the computer labs. So no software installation, deinstallation is required, because everything relevant for our environment is provided over the network, which actually scales really, really well. So it does not really matter if we just operate our computer pools in the basement of the computer center, which was the core of everything we started. So computer pools within the faculties are easily added with some initial effort to check that every machine fits into that framework. But from that point on, everything is pretty much automated and does not require additional preparations. Of course, some synchronization needs to take place. So because administrators are the only ones who could set special exam modes for computer pools, so that still needs to be done, but that would have been required, but on a much larger scale if that would be run in a traditional mode on those pools. And in the end, what we would like to see is that additional software is available within e-assessment, a test. So if an ICT course was running, that actually ICT tools could be used or skills could be tested during those tests.
I want to sum up some of the experiences. Probably we will come back to your question over how students upload artifacts to the LMS for correction and marking. You said, what is the typical size of the course completing exams in the system? I will come back to those. Dirk said, to sum up what there was for the technical part, I do have some experiences, and probably we will answer some of your questions in the next few slides. We still have a few slides to go. So experiences are if we use our ILIAS system for the e-examinations on the multiple choice and so on questions, we learned that it's definitely more than just multiple choice exams. We had the reaction, often we have the reaction of lecturers who say, oh, e-examinations, that's just multiple choice, that's not what I need. But then when we talk to them, they see, oh, I can integrate video in my e-examinations. I can have audio questions for the language skills and so on. So people are very open to try out new formats of e-examinations because they see what benefits they have if they use a computer and not just paper pencil. We had the lecturer of arts. In a paper pencil situation, they have the problem that they show some images on the presentation or on the video wall. So students have to look up, watch the picture because it's provided now. Then they have to go to the question. Oh, it's question 5. Oh, my thoughts were back to question 4. Then they look up again and the picture is gone. And the next picture for question number 13 is already shown. So it's really hard for some disciplines to work on paper pencil if they want to work on art and pictures. So that was a high benefit for some faculties to learn, oh, I can do e-examinations. I do not have to be limited on multiple choice, but students can go on their own pace. They can have question 13, work on art or picture number that's real or true for this question, and then they can provide with their speeds to the next questions and not having this situation now is I have to concentrate on a certain topic. You asked about the costs. I would say definitely the cost in the correction is quite lower than for the paper pencil examinations. That's definitely one of the most benefits we see also for the students and also for the lecturers. Other costs is not easy to compare because nobody ever calculated what is the real cost behind a paper pencil examination. The lecturers have to think about the questions, they have to provide the papers, if it's a large 600 or plus students group, they need several tutors to help in correcting the paper work and so on. And so it's not easy to calculate the cost for a paper pencil examination. And also it's not easy to calculate all of the costs for the e-examination because, of course, you still need a lecturer providing the questions. You need some administration personnel helping in setting up the system. But as we do have this system which is used for teaching and e-examination, we do not have special persons just for examination. So I think this is a system where you can reduce costs because you will in the next 20 years, you will still need computer labs for teaching in universities. And I think bring your own device is one thing that's happening, but if you teach your students, you probably still need a long time in the future, the computer labs. And if you have a mode to use them for e-examinations and for teaching, it can be a cost reduction effort. But we did not manage to say, oh, a paper e-examination costs this amount and the e-examination is cheaper or it has a higher amount of costs. We're not we try some years ago to find the costs, but definitely the correcting is easier, even if it's a high amount of free text answers, because it's much more easy for the lecturers to read typed text than handwritten text. So the cost or the time saving for lecturers in correcting typed text is 30%. And that is a high factor for the lower costs for the correction part of e-examinations. E-examinations are safe because we have securing mechanisms that only certain computers are limited to access our e-examination server. It's not accessible over the internet and so on. We have timestamps. We can, if a computer is breaking down during the examination, we just start another machine and the student can go on the other machine and so on. So they are quite safe compared to the paper pencil work. And as you heard, it makes it quick and easy to arrange e-assessment in existing computer labs. So you can switch from one lab to the other or have one examination over several labs. You asked about the amount of student we can test. It's theoretically not limited because the system can be started in as many labs as you want. I have another slide for that. So it's just then an organizational issue, how to make sure the students are in their right room for the examination. Yeah, I talked about the experiences, quicker access to results is also a benefit for the students. If you have a big question pool, you can assemble exams in future years easier than having them on a paper pencil base. You have better possibilities to evaluate your questions on the quality than you have in the paper pencil work, because you can compare them and compare this year's students to the next year's students, how they compete or in the special questions. And what we deal with is the lack of e-assessment didactics. As I mentioned, a lot of lecturers still think, oh, e-assessment is multiple choice. So, and they do not have the idea of what can I do with a computer or with the e-assessment. So you do have to work with them and to establish some new paradigms on the view of what is possible with e-assessment. We are still in the project phase. We were having more questions on the cost part. We do e-examinations since 2013, so there's experience for quite a while now, especially concerning on the technical part. The amount of 50 e-assessments is not that high if you see the 5 years round. So we have every semester several e-assessments on the ILIAS base. We have now experienced about 20 of these virtual machine-based examinations for programming skills. About 2,800 students took part in the tests and assessments. We have 9 computer labs, which are directly managed by us from the university IT services, and about 160 computers are regularly used for e-assessment. Our biggest e-assessment had 300 plus participants. It's the English language proficiency examination. So the students who want to start English at our university, they have to take this pre-examination, and it's using our system since a few semesters. And these 300 participants they take their exam in turns. So we just have 4 rooms with about 60 computers, and the students come in turns because it's not an examination which has to take place on the same time. So the students do not know each other. They come over a whole day, and so it's easy to handle those large amount of students over the period of time. Our hardest one was 150 participants At the same time, we had to divide them into groups because we had 80 computers at the same time. But we had to scatter them over 6 labs in our building. So you need the amount of supervising personnel also if you have only small rooms. Yeah, I just talked about the lecturers' feedback. We use correction effort, question pools. What was also lessons learned is that having an e-examination can be quieter than a paper-pencil course because probably students seem to be more focused because for them it's also a new situation. Also, you have the typing noise from the keyboards, but it's not having more. It's the silence is astonishing for the lecturers compared to their normal examinations. Students get exam results quicker. If you want to give them the results, probably you can say, okay, examination is over and stay and have a look at your results. It's not a good advice to do that because in every examination can be some mistakes from the lecturer. So it's always good to send them home and as a lecturer just go over the results and check if your questions were correct or is there a problem in the examination. But it's just a quick check and the results can be provided very quickly. As I already said, students like having video or images inside their questions, and it makes it easy to go on their own pace through the questions, and they are not depending on looking up to the projection if there's somebody giving just an image for a certain question. Some downsides is for students who cannot type quickly, but the most part of our students responded they like typing more than handwritten exams. So I think it's a matter of time that's changing. Students get more and more used in typing on keyboards than having handwritten exams. Designing good questions takes a lot of time. I talked about it's a new kind of thinking for our lecturers necessary to think in digital examination mode. And of course, we always have to deal with, is it really safe? Were having this additional question about how can students hand in their solution, which is, I think it's no problem for the LMS base because everything is happening in the LMS. The students are registered with their ID. It's not available or not accessible from outside our computer labs. But it's another issue if it's a programming skill or just an output that the students have to provide. How can you make sure as a lecturer, okay, this is the output, the data that my student provided in the examination. It has to be uploaded somewhere. And yes, part of our lecturers use the LMS just for this uploading feature for the end of the examination. So they program on their regular surroundings, and then the output is they log into the learning management system with their idea, and so they it is safe that they, on their name, hand in what they want to give in as a solution. If you just save it on some kind of mounted disk, so you have bigger problems in proving this is the data that the student uploaded to this disk. Nobody else manipulated the results and so on. It's also possible, but it's a lot more higher amount of technical effort to secure this upload service. We also dealt with some legal questions because universities, Freiburg has a long tradition since 1500 something. And so paper pencil regulations are long experience. But if you have the examination regulations and you try to transfer them into the e-world, you have to respect some legal issues. And what is known from the paper pencil world is some multiple choice questions. So they are quite good in the examination regulations. There are some regulations for multiple choice examinations, but they mean paper and pencil multiple choice. And so we still deal with the legal questions on how can you grade mixed exams who have the multiple choice examination, and probably another part where you have other types of questions or using free text and multiple choice. So that's probably a German thing, but it's not easy to calculate the correct mix of those examinations. And the challenge is we have a good system. We can switch from teaching to e-assessment within minutes. It's not a problem. We do have 24 computer labs, but those computer labs have 14 to 20 computers in one single room. So if you have an e-assessment with 100 and plus persons, we do not have one room with one supervision person. So, but we have to deal with a great organizational challenge. And if you have this aerial view from Freiburg, you see the big red dot in the top is our university IT services in one side of the city, and the second red circle is our library, where we have another, or the building next to the library, where we get another big computer pools, and all the yellow pools are pools from faculties and so on, which we can use for e-assessment. But all of those are small computer pools with 14 to 20 persons capacity. And if you have a lecture for 300 persons, so you have to deal with the organizational thing, which student shall be when and where in which computer pool. So it's not a technical issue, but an organizational. And that's why we still are not very deep into those large computer or large groups. So between 40 and 100 is what we can handle at the moment. As I talked, establishing and providing secure environment for exams is still a challenge. The one side is with the ILIAS system. We have the good solution, but it's the problem if you have these free programming skills, etc. That it's really proof and it's legal proof. So if a student fails and probably complains on his output, probably have this proving problem if you do not have a technical through solution for proving the security is okay. Yeah, and our last slide, I hand over back to Dirk again. So our system is not just for the university, it's open source, and it's already used at several universities. And
exactly. So the project is developed since 2014. It was sponsored, or still is partially sponsored, by the Ministry of Research and the Arts in Baden-Württemberg. And we have a couple of cooperation partners, so a couple of universities like we in Freiburg, but Karlsruhe, Mannheim, and Konstanz universities are using the system too for different purposes, either teaching or doing exams with it. And we have a couple of universities of applied sciences which happily jumped onto this system because it offered them a great amount of simplifying the operation of their computer pools. Often those applied sciences universities are ICT heavy, so which means that lots of courses needs computer resources to run a certain course, to deal with a certain set of software environments, which partially are exclusive. So it was difficult to assign a certain course to a certain computer pool because the software environment might not be the proper one. so that provided them lots of simplification to match and mix available pools to the needs of lecturers and the needs of students to actually work in certain environment. The main service, which means both technically and the back office service desk, is hosted at the University of Freiburg, together with the University of Applied Sciences in Offenburg, which is pretty nearby to our university. What we require from the participating institutions, that they provide a certain level for the low-level administration, like as I introduced in the beginning, they have to manage their own computer ports in a way that they provide the base services like installing the ports and running the DHCP and PXE service, where our system then can link in and provide the additional stuff on top of that. And of course, they should provide the first level support for the lecturers and students having problems or need introduction on how to set up a certain lecture or certain e-exam within that environment. Thank you very much for listening. It was quite a long session with all the different aspects and questions in between. So if you are interested in cooperation or interested in the system, we have a general contact email. You can send us requests, and we have online resources available too. And in preparation for that course, we tried to translate all the available documentation to English too. So for non-German people, it should be possible by now to get a good understanding what is available and what is required.
Yeah, we have a few minutes left until our hour is full, but I still have a few questions we can come back to. There was the question, what is the integration effort to install ILIAS into an environment? ILIAS is like Moodle, as I said, a learning management system. So it is not integrated in a virtual machine, but it's our it's a normal server we have specially for this e-examination. So it's a normal server with Linux, MySQL, and the ILIAS system. And in the bwLehrpool system, we just have this small safe exam browser, which is being started and just connects to our server. And due to the firewall, the server can only be accessed from our PC labs and not from outside of the university. But it's not a virtual machine provided by the bwLehrpool system, so it's an extra server. But the connection to that for the secured access is done by the Safe Exam browser virtual machine inside the Lehrpool umgebung. You were still hanging on the costs. UK estimates £1 billion per year for the UK for paper exam. That might be a good orientation. And so it would be nice if somebody or if other universities are interested on this topic. We tried within the LIRO group to estimate the costs about the different solutions. We have the University of Utrecht. They have this solution with the Chromebooks. They work with mobile machines, which a solution I personally like very much. But you have you have a different infrastructure. And we asked or tried to find out what is the solution from Utrecht. We also have, I think Eva is joining us in a moment, large experience in conducting e-assessments on the University of Zurich. We have, you can see the results in Slack about the comparison of the different solutions we have in the LIRO group. But we were not successful in or bringing together enough data to say, oh, this is the cost they have and for the solution in Utrecht, this is the cost we have for Freiburg, this is the cost for the other universities. So we're still working on this progress, but probably we will find someday, is it cheaper than the paper exams or is it not? But I think only the cost is not the thing you should compare. It's the benefits. You can use videos. And I think in future times, video will be very important in lecturing. You see all the informal learning that's taking place already is via YouTube, via video-based servers outside of universities and so on. So I think having videos as a tool included in examinations will increase in getting importance more and more. So that's a point you cannot deal with the paper examinations. And there's another comment in the chat concerning where is the benefits of e-examinations compared to the paper examinations. In the chat is, as a student, I rather take electronic exams because you can edit the text more easily. This way you can give it a more structure. And I think that's also true. If you have the paper pencil, you just have to cut out or having a lot of paper kritzel, in German we say kritzel aus, and then correct your answer again, and typing, you can rethink your answer and just correct it. And then if you're sure now it's correct, you just hand it in. And that also makes it easier for the lecturer to correct it, because it's just a text and not some black thing. You have to figure out which of this is now the answer and which is not meant to be the answer by the student. Yeah, looking on the time, it's 12, so our hour is full. I hope we could give you the deeper impression on the e-examination systems at the University of Freiburg. Thank you very much for the lot of questions. It fills our hour very exactly, briefly. And yeah, if there's any questions, you see the email address, or you can give some questions, additional comments on Slack. We will also provide our slides on Slack. And hopefully we will meet in Utrecht next week on the on-campus part for some more experience exchange on e-assessment. Thank you very much.
Thank you.